You're listening to the ThriveWorks webcast, where you hear facts, not fluff. Introducing your host, Dr. Anthony Centaur.
Hello, this is Dr. Anthony Centaur, and today we are meeting with Kathleen Leroy. Kathleen is a licensed professional counselor out of Colorado. She has over 20 years experience in the mental health field, and she helps clients with a range of life issues, including stress, anxiety, grief and bereavement, self-care, and of course, relationships. And that's a bit of what we're going to be talking about today because the topic is codependency. So without further ado, Kathleen, thank you for joining our humble webcast this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony. It's great to be here.
So our first question, let's dive right in. Let's start from the beginning. What is codependency? And how does it differ perhaps from a typical dependent personality disorder?
Okay, it's a good place to start. So codependency is a type of relationship where two people are very dependent on one another. Usually there's one person that has some sort of mental illness or addiction or some severe dependency going on, and they're in relationship with someone else who is enabling them and who is supporting them and is losing themselves in the relationship. So not really able to be who they are, do what they want to do because they're so focused on the other person and enabling whatever's going on for that person. The dependent personality disorder it's more focused on an individual. So the individual is dependent in ways where they really just can't function in the world without somebody taking care of them. They usually have very few relationships, and it's where they're not really able to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the difference. It's, two people in a relationship is codependency, and dependency personality disorder is someone that's displaying this dependency, and they usually are in relationships with people that are codependent.
All right. Now, you use the example of an enabler, someone with an addiction, but as we both know, codependency often shows up without something like that in the relationship. Can you give our viewers or our listeners sort of an example of how codependency can creep its way into a relationship, even when there isn't an addiction present?
Sure. So codependency shows up in relationships when we really stop doing what we want to do because we're so concerned about what the other person might think or how they might react. We become threatened in the relationship when someone is going out, making new friends, taking on new work, exploring a passion, a hobby. And in the relationship, we tend to we're threatened. So we do things, we manipulate, we try to find ways to keep the relationship more focused on us.
Yes, that's the sick, twisted dynamic I was looking for. Exactly. Yeah, it's the relationship where the person is threatened if the other partner has a hobby, if the other partner has friends, if the other partner has anything outside of the relationship, right? You had spoken before, and I was just fascinated by it. You talked about an open system relationship and a closed system relationship. Is that what that is about?
Yes, that's exactly what happens. It's so two people are relying basically on each other for all their needs, all their emotional, physical, spiritual, financial needs in there, and it's a closed system. And in an open system, we're in relationship with one another, but we're also have relationships outside of the coupleship, and we're getting support from other places, and we get energy from that support, and then we bring that energy back into the system, into the relationship system. When it's just the two focusing on one another, then the energy gets depleted. And so individuals in a codependent relationship often talk about being exhausted, and there's just no energy coming into the system, and it breaks down.
Yeah, I see that. So one person, each person is looking to the other to charge their batteries, but really, if they're not being energized from someone else, I need you to energize me, you need me to energize you when we're both on empty. That's the problem, right?
Exactly. We're not getting what we need outside. We're not, filling up our tank outside, so we're on empty. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Now, some people might be listening and might say, wait a second, in relationships, you're supposed to rely on your spouse or your partner. You should be able to depend on them. How can we differentiate sort of a healthy dependence or interdependence from an unhealthy codependence?
That's a great question. So a healthy dependence is going to be somewhere we're able to support one another, but we're not providing everything. We're not filling all of the needs. Mm-hmm. And it is balance. Really, balance is the key word. It's, we want to support one another, but we're getting support from outside systems, outside people. And it's all about balance. It's not one or the other. Yeah.
Now, how does someone get into something like this? I mean, how does one get into a codependent relationship? Do they bring it with them into the relationship, or is it something the relationship creates?
No, well, probably it's both, but we definitely bring it in. We definitely bring it in. Because what happens is we normally, I like to say, it's almost like we're addicted to being needed. So we have this our self-worth comes from somebody needing us. And when we're in a codependent relationship, the other person is so dependent on us for all of their self-worth, for all of their support. And that somehow makes us feel good, like we're needed. And as opposed to our self-worth, coming from our own self, our own systems, our own, people, other relationships, our own spirituality, things like that. So if we do bring that in, and it's really kind of a self-esteem, the core of it is a self-esteem issue. And so wherever our self-esteem is, when we come into the relationship, a lot of times that's what will happen. If we have a low self-esteem and our self-worth needs to come from helping somebody else, supporting somebody else, then we will end up in a codependent relationship. Now, while we're in the relationship, the codependency our self-esteem can decrease. Sometimes people might find that when they're not in relationship, they have, they're a little bit more grounded and more in their own life. And when they get into a relationship, their self-esteem kind of gets lower and lower and lower in a codependent relationship. Okay, so it's a both and. They bring it in with them for sure, but then the relationship can exacerbate it. Yes. Yeah, I've heard before the the motto of the codependent is I need you and I need you to need me. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. For some people it's some people are listening to this and they're probably thinking, wow, that is exactly me. I get into relationships and I feel exactly that way. And other people are saying, how on earth are people bringing this type of baggage into a relationship? So you're saying that people get energized from outside the relationship, but you also mentioned that they have self-charging batteries, right? They don't need anyone to say that they need them. They don't need anyone to say they're worthwhile. It's just sort of built into them. They know they're valuable. They know they have confidence. They have self-esteem. They bring these things wherever they go. If you're working with a client and they don't have that, how do they get that, right? If they're on zero, how do they break this tendency in themselves? Well, there's a couple of things initially. I mean, it can be a piece of work that takes time, but being with a good therapist, a good guide, a good mentor, people in their lives that reflect their self-worth. and they notice, they see the things, they see the value in the person, and they're able to reflect that and to, give that back to the person. And then the other thing is very basic learning self-care. So if we take care of ourselves, it helps us to feel good about ourselves. It's a self-esteem builder. So it's as simple as, are we getting what we need moment to moment during the day? Do we need to go out for a walk? Do we need to make a phone call and talk to a friend? Do we need to eat well? Do we need to get better sleep? All of those self-care things. Do we need to take a bath or, go out and try a new hobby, so that we feel good about ourselves and we accomplish something. So those are the things that if we do those for ourselves, not for somebody else, because we're really good at doing it for somebody else, but if we can do it for ourselves, then it builds our self-esteem.
Well, those are exactly the things that when someone is in a codependent relationship, those are all threats, right? Like those are the hobbies. Like if someone is taking care of themselves, spending time focusing on themselves, doing self-care, that is a threat to the partner because they see the person being more independent. They don't need me and they need you to need me. I don't know if I said that right, but they have that need to be needed. So whenever someone, even if it's not a hobby, even if it's not getting social, even just saying, oh, I can use some alone time. I've had codependent clients who are like, alone time, that's the scariest thing ever. Why does my partner want alone time? So I guess to kind of edge into the next question, when you're working in a codependent relationship, does it ever get fixed? Like, can the relationship be fixed? Or is this like, look, you're too far gone. It's too sick. We need to break this relationship up. You guys need to do independent work on yourselves before you're healthy enough to get back into a relationship. Which is it? Yeah, just what do I do with Kathleen?
Well, it's not all or nothing. Sometimes relationships need to end. Yes, not always. Sometimes relationships need both people can work on their issues and work on it, and the relationship can have boundaries. A therapist can help the couple create the proper boundaries, the right boundaries that can help the individuals get what they need. And, in a relationship, there needs to be reassurance. So if one individual is ready to do more self-care and ready to step out, yes, that's going to feel very threatening. But that person can help reassure the other person. So there's ways to communicate. Communicate the new boundary, communicate the new self-care, communicate with reassurance so that the other person has a chance to be able to, explore maybe their own self-care, and they have some reassurance there. In some cases, couples need to take breaks, maybe take a 3 to 6 month break and go away and do some of this self-care and learn about boundaries and build self-worth, and then they can come back together and the dynamic is not as strong and maybe it can be worked with.
Yeah, I mean, I see that as probably the biggest challenge in working with codependent couples, that each of the two individuals in the relationship are in different places. One is in a place where he or she realizes they need to change. This is unhealthy. I need to be less codependent myself. And the other partner is a few steps from there, right? Like the steps to change are, I'm not aware I have a problem. I'm aware I have a problem, but I'm not ready to change. I'm aware I have a problem and I know I need to change, but I don't know when. I'm aware I have a problem. I know I need to change and I'm going to do it at some planned time in the next, 60 days. And then I'm ready to change. They're about 4 steps apart. Mm-hmm. So I guess do you need to bring partner 2 up to where partner 1 is?
Well, we all have choices about that. We all have the same resources. We have choices about going out and getting help. and getting
Mm-hmm.
support. Sometimes we're not ready. And, there's no judgment about that. And sometimes there might be an addiction, or there might be some sort of, mental illness, or something that someone is really struggling with. And it is going to take a lot of work. And in those cases, yes, ideally, the couple is moving along, but somebody can even, that's ready to stop the codependent behavior, they can continue to be in the relationship. It's challenging. It's very difficult, but they can continue to keep the focus on themselves and detach with love.
Yeah.
We don't have to amputate everybody. We can detach with love, but it's very challenging to watch your partner still not be ready to make those choices.
Yeah, and there's one thing I notice in working with clients in this situation, there's so much guilt on behalf of the person who wants to get better, because the person who's still codependent doesn't know they need to change or isn't ready. They're in a lot of pain, right? They've been relying on someone really to fill their batteries, to reinforce them, to give them self-esteem. And it hasn't been healthy, but it's been basically their addiction, or it's been what has kept them going. And now having that person be more independent, have healthy boundaries, is really scary and really threatening, and very painful for the codependent to have the other person get healthier. You mentioned boundaries. Of course, there's the very well-known book by John Cloud and Henry Townsend. Henry Cloud and John Townsend. And I think that book is probably it's like the most terrifying book in the world to the codependent, right? It's like, this is the hardest, scariest thing that you can come up against, is healthy boundaries, because they don't have those boundaries, because that's how they get their batteries charged.
Right. Yeah, and it feels like being on another planet. Frankly, it's like, where did this come from, and how is this, the boundary just feels so terrifying. And and we feel like we're being abandoned.
Yeah.
We feel like it feels like life or death, because we've never had boundaries. The codependent has never had boundaries, and they weren't taught boundaries. And so it just feels like a completely different, it's like being on another planet. And it's like, can I survive this? Or is it, and usually in childhood, there were times that it was like life or death, or the child couldn't take care of themselves. So it felt like, it was going to be, we had to enmesh with other people, enable people, be in these codependent relationships to survive and to grow up. Mm-hmm. So when somebody tries to do it when we're an adult, we kind of regress back to those childhood feelings.
Yeah. You bring up childhood, and I know as psychotherapists, we love to blame mom for everything, but this is actually something we can blame mom for, right? Like, this is like definitively screwed up, not enough love in your life as you were younger. Is that right? Can we blame mom for this one?
Well, we can blame our primary caretakers. Yes.
Okay, so we blame mom and dad.
Yeah, mom and dad. There were things, that probably happened where we were not getting, no matter which side of the codependent relationship we're on, either we weren't getting enough support, or we weren't taught boundaries. We weren't taught we weren't taught self-worth. A lot of times usually there was a very critical parent involved. Mm-hmm. And we're adults now. So we can say that, we can blame our parents for what happened, and sure, they did screw us up, but we're adults now, and we have to take responsibility for our actions, our behaviors, how we're going to relate to people. And so, we have to learn how to take care of ourselves and set boundaries and stay and be in healthy relationships and still care about people and still be connected to people, because we don't want to be completely independent, where we're not in relationship at all. We want to be able to have, get the support and love and give the support and love that we want.
Got it. So once you're aware of it, you can't blame mom anymore. Is basically basically it's mom's fault until you realize there's a problem, and then it's your responsibility to fix it. So sort of there's a statute of limitations on blaming mom and dad.
It won't happen overnight though. So
No.
yeah, it's true. I mean, but it's grief. It's grief work. It's really working through anger and disappointment and grief that we didn't get what we needed when we were younger, because we have human parents and who made mistakes. And after we do some of that grief work, we can begin to really, you're right. It's a statute of limitations. Eventually we have to own up and suit up.
No, you're right too, because you said, look, it takes time. It's grief work. It's bereavement work. If we have, I'm sure we'll have some people watching or listening who are saying, okay, that's me. I know I have this. How, and they're saying, I don't know if I can ever be confident. I don't know if I'll ever be out of this. How long does it take for someone to be cured of this, for lack of a better term?
Well, it depends on how severe it is, but it's a slow process. It takes one day at a time, and it can take, it can take a couple years. It can take time. It's just like, think of, when we lose somebody in our life to death.
Okay.
It can take a handful of years to really work through that grief. Mm-hmm. And I think it's grieving, it's building self-esteem, and that stuff takes time, but it's progress. And we make a little bit of progress, and sometimes we take a step back and then we make a little bit more. But it's worth it. It's totally worth the work, because we want ourselves. We want to be who we are intended to be, and to be able to give to other people who we are. And so it's worth it, but it just depends on the severity of it. And sometimes it's lifetime work. It's something that we just have to go back to the basics of every day, and, remember to take care of ourselves.
Okay. Kathleen, I want to thank you for carving out some time today. How can our listeners or watchers get a hold of you?
Well, they can call ThriveWorks, and you can call 720-358-3864. That's 720-358-3864. Or you can reach me by email, KathleenL@thriveworks.com.
Great. And this is ThriveWorks in Denver, this location, right?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anthony.
Bye.
Well, I guess the only thing is that all relationships have some degree of codependency, and that's, some of it's, and it can be really severe, but it's okay. We do the best that we can, and we have ways to get help and to get better. But this is something that can happen easily, and but a good therapist, a good support system can help.